Welcome to I Survived Cancer, Now What? A series of interviews with cancer survivors at various stages of their survival journeys, hosted by myself and Stacey Strongaroni, who's here to be interviewed today. We are both cancer survivors and certified life coaches. Welcome, Stacey.
Hi, Michael.
Thanks for being interviewed today.
Sure.
Um, so let's jump in right away. I know we've talked a bit already, but if you would share with our viewers, what type of cancer did you have, and what stage?
I had triple negative breast cancer. And when I was diagnosed, it was stage two.
And how long ago were you diagnosed?
It was in 2017, late 2017. So I just hit my 5-year remission about a year ago.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
It's a big milestone.
Yes.
And, obviously with these questions, feel free to share whatever information you feel comfortable with. Um, what treatments or surgeries did you do as part of your treatment plan?
Yeah. So the thing with triple negative breast cancer is it's the one where all the kind of new technologies don't quite apply. And so did a very harsh chemo regime. I think it was 16 rounds of chemo. Um, did a lumpectomy and some follow-up lumpectomies, and 33 rounds of radiation.
Wow. That's a lot.
Kind of put you through the ringer. They
Yeah.
figure you're young and it's an aggressive form of cancer, so they treat the crap out of you.
It's got to take a toll on your body.
Yes, indeed.
In addition to obviously all the medical intervention, what self-care practices or integrative treatment practices did you use to support your physical, emotional, mental, spiritual health while you were navigating this experience?
I mean, I'd say while I was navigating treatment, um, I kind of was just in survival mode, tunnel vision, um, really focusing on one foot in front of the other. So, I went to acupuncture. I spoke with a nutritionist. I, um, walked a lot, tried to keep moving, did yoga, all those things. But I can't say I was like, I was practicing self-care, but not in the way I would have imagined. I was really, my form of self-care was actually, uh, just being very, really present and in the moment and listening to my body and doing, what was needed. And, a lot of the time that meant, lying on my side because I was feeling nauseous all the time and, maybe trying to get out of the house once a day. It was also in the middle of winter. One of those winters where we had like 8-degree days. So, um, yeah.
And since you've been in remission, are there any practices that you get into to take good care of yourself?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think before treatment, I was a pretty decent self-care advocate who practiced what I preach. I'd say maybe the first year out was a little similar to in treatment, where it was just one foot in front of the other. And I'd say the biggest self care I practiced was just clearing my calendar. Like I had basically two priorities. Like I had to work and I had to not feel bad. And so giving myself the space uh to not do things I didn't want to do, really listen to my body. um I think that was probably the most important self-care thing I did. And oddly enough, the pandemic came probably a year and a half into my kind of remission. And for all the awfulness and terribleness of the pandemic, the um the stay at home piece of it might have been the best thing that ever happened to me, because it really it just stripped away all external obligations and really allowed me to focus. And so that's probably the biggest thing.
Mm,
Also, I'll say, um, I did a lot of restorative yoga. There's this type of yoga called urban Zen integrative therapy, and it's about kind of breathing and restorative yoga and Reiki and oils. And I would kind of religiously go to these classes. It was kind of
mm,
the one thing I would push myself to do when I kind of didn't want to do it. Um, I went to physical therapy for some, you know, after effect challenges. I've always been the type of person who tries to eat lots of vegetables and, exercise and walk and get fresh air. And so really continue to tend to those practices. And then I think the last thing I'll say is, one part of self-care for me was being really vocal about what I'd been through, and so that other people knew that they can come to me if they had questions or needed support. And I got involved with an advocacy organization called Breast Cancer Action that was focused on, um, the root causes of cancer, environmental justice, social justice, racial justice, equity, things that aligned with my values and really helped me. Um, Kind of navigate this thing that had happened to me in a way that was in line with my values and all other aspects of my life. And so all those things taken together were, I can't say how deliberate they all were. Like, I wasn't like, here's my self-care list. But when I
mm.
reflect back, those are the types of things I was doing to bounce back. And it took a while, but I definitely feel it took way longer than I thought, way longer than I thought. But I can now say from a few years out that, I think that suite of activities, I'm in a really good place now. And I think that that suite of activities helped me get there.
I'm happy that you're in a good place now. It sounds like you did quite a lot, actually, intentionally or not, to take good care of yourself, uh, physically, emotionally, you know, politically, even to kind of take some action in response to this kind of horrible situation. Also, sounds like the pandemic, as bad as it was a bit of a blessing in disguise, and for you to have that space to really just kind of focus on yourself and what you needed. So I'm glad you're able to do that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Um, what was something that friends or family did that was really helpful and supportive in your first couple of years of survival?
I think something that really got me through treatment was my friends and family. I never went to a chemo alone. I had someone who was there after surgery. Um, if I didn't want to go to a doctor appointment alone, I didn't have to. Sometimes I chose to, whether that was the right or wrong decision, I'm not sure. Um, and that community has stuck by me. They're all my lifelong friends and family. And so I'd say in that year or two after, um, they continued to be there. Um, they allowed me to continue talking about it, processing it. So it wasn't like, everyone moved on and I was the one holding it. Um, they affirmatively asked me how I was doing. They affirmatively kind of kept in close touch with me. Um, and just being there with me and for me and supporting me, um, just as a person, whether or not we were directly talking about cancer or not. Um, and then, I think for everything I said earlier about how one of my biggest self-care moves was doing nothing, I think that they gently helped me find that balance between wanting and needing to do nothing and also wanting and needing to do things and move on. I had one friend who she kept getting us tickets to things like shows and, sometimes I was like, oh God, I don't want to leave my house right now, but I would never regret doing the thing. And so, um, I think just that presence and that kind of almost like silent strategy of like giving me options, but not forcing me to do things I didn't want to do, really worked well for me.
What, if anything, are you still struggling with today, a couple of years out?
Um, surprisingly, I mean, relatively nothing. I mean, relatively, I'm fine. Like 5 years out, they say you're cured in my situation. Um, I'm fine. And yeah, there's all sorts of stuff. I think that going through treatment does a number on your mental health, and um kind of hard if you had any uh lean of anxiety or depression before. It just kind of hardwires those paths. And while I think that treatment actually helped me get more resilient and more able to manage anxiety, um, it's definitely something that it's subtle, and but I it's very subtle, so you think it's not a big deal. But then I did seek out support and got support, and I was like, oh, that was real. um, and I think that that's actually a lot of the things, like all the things are subtle. Like the area where I had radiation just continues to hurt. My upper back is sore, blah, blah, blah. Like all the aches and pains just got baked in by radiation. Is it like immobilizing? No. Is it difficult and frustrating? Yeah. And it's like this constant reminder. And then there are the if you so there's you could do nothing about it and walk around stiff and unhappy, or you can do something about it and then you have thousands of appointments, right? Like, so if I want to go to physical therapy with someone who understands cancer, et cetera, it's not the person on the corner. It's, you commute into the city and blah, blah, blah. And like, so you are still kind of in this, like, even, 5 years out, you're still in this land of like appointments and et cetera. Similarly with doctor's appointments, just yesterday, I had my first, what they call survivorship appointment, which is where the oncologist doesn't need to see you quite so often, and they kind of put you with an RN who's focused on survivorship. It was actually quite good. But I had to commute pretty far. The appointment went started an hour late, which is just like routine for these things. Um, she felt something. She wanted me to get scanned. It was an amazing experience because they did it in the moment. Usually it would be multiple appointments later. They did it in the moment. But what I thought would be like a quick thing, I'd be headed home in an hour, was like a 4-hour thing. And again, it's not a big deal. It's an inconvenience, but it's just you're never quite um done. And you feel like, well, it's 5 years later, I shouldn't be like harping on these things, or I shouldn't be, other people bounce back quicker. But that's been my experience. A lot of appointments, a lot of aches and pains, and the constant fear that it'll come back, which is real.
Yeah, there's a lot there. I mean, it's interesting. I'm glad that you're doing well in the grand scheme of things. Um, you said several times, "I'm fine," and a bit of like sort of a minimizing of the reality that you're navigating. And yeah, while in the grand scheme of things, you are healthy at the moment. You just named a whole bunch of ways that your life has changed indefinitely because of this experience. And I've noticed, maybe it's not a universal thing, but I've noticed with a lot of cancer survivors that I've spoken to, this sort of comparative situation of like, mine is not as bad as somebody else's, so I can't be that upset about it. It's almost like we can't even let ourselves feel the reality of the impact because it's not as bad as somebody else. There's certain it seems to be a bit of a common theme. At the same time, you don't want to wallow in it and be kind of like lost in it. So I know that there's a balancing point, but what you just listed is significant. There's a lot to navigate, even if it's just on a yearly basis. But some of that is, the physical experience that you're having, the way that your body has changed, the pain that you still feel all these years later. I have some versions of that myself. Um, that's significant and important. Not debilitating, not, going to end your life and change everything, but I guess I'm saying it back to sort of say to you, it's okay to like also say that. That's significant. It's big.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. You're right. And I mean, it's in a way, it's like a theme that comes out of oncology, right? Like I love
Hmm.
my oncologists. They saved my life. But they're not always thinking about these like collateral consequences and these after effects because I mean, they have a win, like they cured it.
Yeah.
And not to say they haven't been compassionate and given me great referrals and whatever, but I do think that it is like there's just this focus on surviving it and maybe not as much focus on um affirmatively trying to minimize the um after effects.
And I think my experience too is seeing a lot of campaigns out there, for better or worse, that like sort of glorify the survival, like highly polished. I'm doing great. I'm running triathlons. I'm feeling amazing, and that's wonderful. And I think it's true and real. And then there's also the realities of everyday life and the ways that we have pain still emotionally, physically, the impact that it has from time to time in more significant ways in our lives is still quite real. Obviously, we're a very bare bones situation here. And part of why I wanted to do these interviews was to sort of expose just that even if it's not like my life is terrible, that there's impact and ongoing impact, and it's not like life was before. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, so thanks for being so candid about the realities that you're navigating right now.
Can I just say one thing and I digress
Hmm.
and we'll get back to the plan, but
Sure.
I hear you on the like, I just ran, 50 triathlons. And one of my favorite articles is the late great Barbara Ehrenreich. I think that's how you say it. And she wrote this article called Smile, You Have Cancer. And it's like all about that kind of like narrative. And it's about like the overcoming and the being the happy. And she's like, no, you can also just be angry and pissed. And
Mhm.
it's just one of my favorite articles. I go back and read it like all the time. Um, and one other thing I want to say too is like you said, once a year, and it's not once a year. Oh my God, even all these years later, it's at least quarterly that there's somebody poking and prodding me
Mhm.
and et cetera. And, I don't say that to correct you, but to just say, it's actually what the new doctor promised me yesterday. She said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to line up all your appointments so they are on one day in March. So your scans, your meeting with me. And I was like, oh God, like that sounds great. Cause right now, I mean, I'm just almost every time I see a doctor, there's something they notice, there's some follow-up, there's something. And
Yeah.
I just, anyway.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you said that. I think for every type of cancer, there's different protocols, in the aftercare situation. I know for me, as I said in my interview, I'm at once a year, but my scans went from once a month to every 3 months to twice a month. I mean, twice a year to now yearly. But they used to be on the same day. Now they've separated them, like when I get my scans, when I get my results. So even just that is like a thing. uh, yeah, I think everybody's probably navigating a little bit of a different schedule in this reality. And as you said earlier, no matter how far away you get from it, all of a sudden you're sitting back in an oncology office and people are poking and prodding you, and you are a cancer survivor. No matter how far you can get from it, it's always still a reality that we have to navigate.
Can I say
Um,
one more thing about something I'm still struggling with?
yes,
Like a
please.
PSA for like anyone who is at the beginning of their treatment. I still like giving a blood draw is like
Mm,
a traumatic experience. Like pretty quickly, and they didn't want to give me a port. They're like, you're young, you're healthy, blah, blah, blah. So they did the chemo through my arms, like a normal
oof,
IV.
yeah.
And And probably like midway through treatment, it became really difficult for them to find a vein. But even still, all these years out, like if I have to give blood, it is like training for a marathon. It's like Pedialyte and blah, blah, blah. And there was one time where someone didn't listen to me when I said, hey, I know this thing about myself. I really only want to give blood at the cancer place because, and they sent me to some tech from some regular thing. And this person just like dug in my vein. It was the worst thing
Oh,
ever. And like, I just want to say that so folks don't feel crazy if they're having that experience, because it is wild to me. And nobody warned me about that one.
yeah, that's a rough one. There's a lot of PTSD, versions of PTSD that come with this experience. And even with really good medical professionals, sometimes we're not listened to. And that is really challenging. So I'm glad that you shared that. Yeah, it's that, right? Like even just the mental preparation of knowing, of not knowing who you're going to be sitting with to draw blood and what that experience is going to be like. It seems like such a simple thing, but there's so much laid into it that's can be really, really hard.
Yeah.
Um, well, switching gears a little bit, what surprised you the most about yourself during this experience?
Yeah, I'm really strong. I'm really resilient. I can kind of get through anything. And um I think that the way I was able to just get really focused and get through this has um it's changed me as a person. Like I feel like I can get through anything. And yeah, it really upped my confidence. It upped my ability to advocate for myself. I feel more calm and at peace and focused than ever. Um, I would never wish this experience on anyone, but I do. Um, it's part of my path, and I like who I am having had gone through it.
Yeah. I like who you are, and this experience connected us. So I appreciate that. There are some, like you said, some positive outcomes from a really terrible experience. I guess that's true of a lot of things, but uh, other than what you have already shared, which you shared a lot, part of why we're doing these interviews is for other survivors to, know that they have other people feeling the same things, that they're not alone. But also, it's partially for our friends and family to be aware that even if we look okay, that there might still be things we need or realities that they're not aware of. So, is there anything that you would want your friends and family members to know about being a long-term survivor that they might not realize?
Um, Not really. I mean, it definitely feels a little Goldilocks, because I don't want to say, oh, ask me about my health, because I don't want everybody to ask me about my health, or
Yeah.
um give me support when I have an appointment. Because sometimes I like what I'm a little self-conscious about this video is that like I actually try to keep a lot of that stuff to myself, and I actually don't necessarily want an outpouring of um it's mine to carry. And some people like I think about my parents who I love to death. Like if they are on this journey with me of like the appointments and blah blah blah, I come to manage their anxiety when I'm really managing my own. And so it's
Yeah.
easier for me if they don't know the details, so I'm not managing their feelings about it and trusting them to manage them themselves. And but it's Goldilocks, because then if everyone stopped asking me, I'd be like, why isn't anyone asking me? And I don't know. I don't know what to ask for right now, but I know I can say with confidence I'm getting everything I need from my friends and family. So maybe it's just that I've learned to ask for what I need, and my friends and family have learned to be responsive to that. And right now, that is like a delicate balance that is working.
Yeah, I think the Goldilocks metaphor is pretty apt. Um, and perhaps if any friends and family members are watching these interviews, take in the fullness of what we're all sharing. All of this is going on in the background, and while we might not need anything in the immediate, there could be a day. We just sometimes get caught out of left field with something that we do need some support around, or we do need some space. And a lot of this we do kind of just need to carry on our own. And there's some peace in not having to carry other people's anxiety and stress about it. But there are the moments that we do need the support that we still need people present for even years later. So, um, yeah, I think you said that well. Um, Last question. What support services would you like to see created for or offered to long-term survivors that don't currently exist? I don't see a ton of them out there. I'm curious what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I agree. I don't see a ton out there. And like the friends and family thing, it also feels a little Goldilocks in the sense of I think there's value in community and knowing other survivors and being able to support each other, but also I don't know that I would sign up for a group thing right now because yeah, my hold on my own situation is delicate enough, and I there are definitely individuals in my life who I support through cancer, and that is not at all a burden. But like a I don't know that like a survivor group would be the right thing for me. I I do think that the experience I was telling you about yesterday, where you kind of go from an oncologist who's like, oh, your blood work's fine, blah, 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 to like someone who's really focused on survivorship and is asking about the collateral things, who gave me a very thorough exam. And when she felt something, she got me the scan right away, like to make the kind of follow up the way she aligned my appointments. So there was like a real like EQ of like trying to minimize the amount of time there. I think the world needs more like restorative yoga, gentle yoga. Like it's just not, especially here in New York, like it's a
Mhm.
very big difference I've seen from LA to New York, where like I can't always find those types of things out in the world. I think things like acupuncture and physical therapy and um, with folks who have like a cancer background can be hard to find. It can be hard to get your insurance to pay for it. Um, so I think, ideally would be more availability and more support on the like soothing, restoring, strengthening types of things that people need to do to feel better. It can be expensive money wise, it can be expensive time wise. And so, and this goes well beyond cancer, right? It's people dealing with anything, of just like a society that is more set up for health, a society that is more set up for wellness, insurance that acknowledges the need for these alternative supports. And yeah, it's like my dream vision. I know that it feels a little indulgent, but that's um and just like more, and last thing I'll say is just more in treatment, more talking about the collateral consequences, more talking about what it means to be a survivor, because at least in my experience, like even I still feel like a failure because I'm still dealing with this. Or,
Yeah.
I remember my doctor telling me before I started chemo, like, oh, yeah, you'll be okay. You can work, blah, blah, blah. And like, no, I was so sick. And I know that there's a way in which that um, is meant to encourage you to like be hopeful. And like sometimes your mindset can be really important, but then it also makes you feel like there's something wrong with you, that you're still dealing with it. And so, um, yeah, just someone who could do a better, like an orientation that can help do better on like, yeah, these things you're still feeling are real, even if I can't measure it on a blood test. and I'm going to help you find what you need to like make it less bad.
Yeah, that's a really good point. There's at least in my experience, there's not been a lot of like transition of like you're cured and now let's think about the future and how do you plan for being a survivor long term and the needs that might arise 2 years from now, 3 years from now, you know. Um, I also echo your sentiment around like I don't know that I would attend a group, not regularly, but I think if there was a group that existed that I could go to on a day when I needed to, I might take advantage of that. I don't think it's something I would do monthly or weekly, but there are certainly days where I wish there were people I could connect with a little quicker. I certainly have friends like you and other people that I can talk to, but you know, it'd be nice to have access to that. I know there's definitely some online forums and stuff like that, but for me, just jumping into a forum where I can't see somebody and posting something is not quite as supportive to me as maybe connecting with somebody, you know, over even over Zoom or something. Um, well, thank you. This has been incredibly informative. I appreciate your openness and candor with what you're navigating, and also, you know, the optimism that's part of all of this. Um, for everybody else that's watching, if you want to be interviewed yourself or know somebody that might want to be interviewed, I will post our contact information, our YouTube's channel, our Instagram, as well as our email. And either Stacey or myself will reach out to you to set up a time to be interviewed. Thanks again, Stacey. It's great
Thank you,
seeing you as
Michael.
always.
You too.
Um, and we'll see our next interview up pretty soon. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.